In the cold silence of a forgotten town, where the streets were painted with shadows and the air carried the scent of misery, a little girl named Charlie opened her eyes to a world that had already conspired against her. She was 6 when the only anchors of her fragile life, her parents, closed their eyes forever. Death took them swiftly, but left Charlie behind, as if the world had been waiting to punish her innocence. She would lie awake at night, her small body curled on a straw bed, gazing at the stars through the broken roof. And in those twinkling lights, she found comfort. She told herself a story every night, that when parents left their children alone, they became stars. They shone down to remind their children that they still watched, still loved, still cared. And so she smiled at the sky, whispering secrets to her mother and father, believing the stars carried her words. But life is crueler than fairy tales. 10 years old, Charlie's faith shattered. Her body bruised, her stomach aching with hunger, her hands torn from labor she never chose. And she wondered, if her parents had truly become stars, would they not see her? Would they not descend from heaven to save her? No, she thought bitterly. They must not be in heaven. They must be in hell. Because no soul that resides in paradise could ever abandon their child to such torment. Every Sunday, she walked into the echoing chambers of the church, her knees pressing into cold stone. She clasped her hands, and with trembling lips she prayed, not for blessings, but for answers. She asked God why her parents had left, why she was cursed with beauty that only brought her pain, why her heart screamed for warmth yet received only the icy stares of the world. She would confess to God her darkest truth, that she hated being alive, and still silence answered her. 12. Fate struck once more. The only person who had shown her a fraction of care, Madame Catherine, her guardian, was claimed by a sudden illness. Catherine's daughter, who seldom visited, arrived only to sell the house and strip Charlie of the roof above her head. By the end of that week, the girl with sapphire eyes was homeless. The world outside was not waiting with kindness. It was waiting with hunger. Hunger for her flesh, hunger for her innocence, hunger for her soul. Men in the marketplace, wrapped in cloaks of respectability, looked at her not as a child but as a commodity. They whispered, they plotted, and soon her body was sold, piece by piece, night after night, under the dim glow of street lamps. Charlie became both prisoner and product. Her face, carved with angelic beauty, her deep ocean blue eyes that could melt hearts, these became her curse. For in those eyes, society saw nothing but temptation. They did not see the child screaming within. They did not see her brokenness. They saw only a body to consume and a soul to break. Every night, as she lay on cold sheets in strangers' rooms, she counted her breaths like a soldier in battle. Each inhale was survival. Each exhale was surrender. And still she endured. Her beauty sold well, but the cost was her dignity. Her innocence was not just stolen once. It was stolen over and over until it no longer existed. But one night, when her body was weak and her spirit barely clung to the thin thread of life, she collapsed. A doctor was called, not out of compassion but because the buyer feared being implicated in her death. The doctor examined her frail figure, her pale skin stretched thin over bones, and shook his head. He told her quietly, almost tenderly, that her life was nearing its final chapter. He said she had only a few steps left before she reached the end. And in those words, Charlie felt a strange relief. Death was no longer her enemy. It was her escape. Yet even as her body betrayed her, the world was not done tormenting her. She was branded with names, whispered in alleys, shouted in drunken songs, whore, harlot, sinner. The same men who destroyed her spirit spat venom in public. The same society that consumed her innocence now called her impure. That was her final punishment, to be condemned not just by her tormentors but by the very community that had forced her down this path. But Charlie, in her silent suffering, carried a secret weapon. Her eyes, those piercing, stormy blue eyes. They no longer held the soft glow of childhood, nor the naive belief that her parents shone above as stars. No, her eyes had become oceans, turbulent and endless. They told stories without words. And when strangers dared to meet her gaze, they flinched. Because in those eyes lived a haunting truth, that they had destroyed something precious, something irreplaceable. Charlie's life became a ghost story. A girl too beautiful for her own survival, too innocent for the cruelty of man, too fragile for the weight of sin thrust upon her. She lived on, but barely. Each day was a cliffhanger. Would she see tomorrow, or would tomorrow bury her? Each breath she took was a rebellion against the chains society wrapped around her. And then came the night when her body gave its final surrender. Alone, lying on a wooden floor, she closed her eyes. The sounds of the market faded. The whispers of men vanished. The church bells that once mocked her silence seemed far away. For the first time, she was free. But her story did not end there. Because Charlie's story is not just Charlie's. It is the story of every child abandoned too soon, every orphan punished for existing, every girl whose beauty became her curse, every soul society crushed under the weight of hypocrisy. Charlie's ghost lives on, staring through those stormy blue eyes, asking us one question. Will you let another child suffer as I did? Or will you speak, fight, and break the silence? And that, dear listener, is where her story becomes yours. For if her pain moved you, if her voice echoed in the chambers of your heart, then you must not stay silent, because silence is complicity. Subscribe now, not just to this channel, but to the truth. Join this journey where stories like Charlie's are not forgotten, where voices long buried are given breath once more. Let her story ignite a fire within you, to never ignore the cries of the innocent, to never look away from the suffering, to never allow beauty, poverty, or orphanhood to be called a crime again. Because Charlie's life may have ended, but her story is only beginning. And it begins with you,